I'm Jamie Zwilling, and today we have a very special interview with St. Louis Park Public Schools' new Superintendent, Rob Metz. Superintendent Metz, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
And welcome to the new position. So why don't we get right started and tell us a little bit about your history in the district.
Well, I've actually been in St. Louis Park this was my 16th year working in St. Louis Park. I started out nine years as an elementary principal at Aquila Primary Center, which I enjoyed a great deal. And then 6 years ago was moved to the high school and became the high school principal for the past 6 years. And now I'm in my first few months as school superintendent. So most of my time at Aquila, then moved to the high school, and now superintendent.
Terrific. So some new territory as superintendent, but certainly not new to the district. So that gives you an advantage, I would think, of knowing a lot about the district. So as you're putting together your agenda, what are kind of your goals here as you take over as superintendent?
My main goal as superintendent is to keep our schools competitive. Most people don't realize it, but schools are a very competitive business now. Students have many choices. They have open enrollment, so they can go to school in whatever town they happen to live in, or they can go to any other town they want to go to school. They can go to private schools, of course. They can take homeschool, or they can take classes online. And now, once you're in 10th grade, you can actually take college classes for free. So it's a great time to be a student because you have many options. And in the school world, we're trying to provide a competitive product, which for us means excellent learning opportunities. The more competitive we are, the more students we draw, and that helps us improve.
Tremendous. And I know this fall you're already facing a referendum. You're asking voters to approve some dollars so you can continue that excellence. Can you tell us a little bit about the upcoming referendum?
Sure. I think the most important thing is that I want to tie the referendum to our competitiveness, and that means tying it to our brand. So as I'm going out and about and talking to people around St. Louis Park, which I'm doing a lot of the last few months, I'm trying to explain what is our brand. What is it about St. Louis Park, the city, and what is it about St. Louis Park, the schools, that cause people to choose us? And there are 5 things that I've identified that I'm hearing from parents mostly and from students of the reasons they come here. So number 1 is we're very academic. St. Louis Park has a long history of being academically successful. Last year, for example, the high school was rated the 3rd highest rated high school in Minnesota by the Washington Post. If you go back in time, you would find many high achieving students that come from this school district. So it's very academic. The joke I tell is that there's more status at St. Louis Park High School being the editor of the school newspaper than there is being the quarterback on the football team. Now, I'm the biggest football fan in the world, but that tells the story of the academic prominence of St. Louis Park High School. It's cool to be smart in St. Louis Park, and we draw a lot of very top students to this district who are taking some very challenging courses. So academics is number 1. The second thing is innovation. This district has a long history of being innovative. We were one of the first districts to start an IB diploma program, International Baccalaureate, at the high school about a dozen years ago. That turned out to be a great decision. We were one of the first districts to start a Spanish immersion school, PSI, about 15 years ago. That was a great decision. We have a 9th grade program at the high school that is focused on reducing failure rates of 9th grade students, which is a key indicator in the high school world. Because if students pass all their 9th grade classes, about 99% of the time they're going to graduate from high school in 4 years. The whole state is trying to work on improving graduation rates. And we have a 9th grade program right here in St. Louis Park that's causing our graduation rates to rise for all students. That program is being copied by people all over the country and all over the state. So this willingness to try new things, to be innovative, to not just sit back, but to be out aggressively changing the way education looks is a key factor. Another key factor is our diversity. We have a lot of diversity in the park, and it's seen as a very positive thing. The people that were looking for a new superintendent, the search committee, they told me that this was the only district they've ever searched for where when they interviewed the community members, the community members recognize diversity as a positive. They feel that if their kids go to our schools, have the chance to go to school with every kind of person you could possibly think of that walks in our door, every racial group, every religious group, every income level, that when they graduate, they're going to have benefited from that experience. They would have had an experience unlike they're going to get in many other places. So diversity in our case is definitely a positive. The fourth is historical support. We have a long history in St. Louis Park, 114 graduating classes at the high school. When you look back at the number of people that have gone to school in St. Louis Park at one time or another, that is our secret weapon. Many school districts have a hard time passing a referendum, which we're going to talk about in a minute. We've had very good success, and I think the reason is our history. As I've been out and about around the community this fall, I've talked to so many people who may not have children in the schools right now, but their children went here, or their grandchildren went here, or their neighbors' children went here. They drive by this high school, they see the exact same school their kids went to in 1980, and it's still there. And there's a lot of emotional connection to the school district from the residents of St. Louis Park. So that history is a huge advantage to us. The history connects to lifelong learning. We have one of the most aggressive and advanced community ed programs in the entire state, and I think people that live here probably recognize that. And the fifth part of our brand is the size. We're the absolute perfect size. Students love coming to this district because we're small enough where everybody knows your name, but we're big enough where we offer the same programs that everybody else does. The advantage is that our kids actually get a chance to participate. They don't have to specialize in one or two things. So if you grew up in a great big suburban high school and you played soccer since the time you were born, there's a very good chance that by the time you get to high school, you would have been cut from the team. Very less likely that's going to happen here. Our kids get a wide variety of experiences. They can be in a sport, they can be in a play, they can play in the band. They don't have to specialize in one thing, and they really appreciate that. So this brand that I'm talking about is fairly unique. I mean, we provide an educational program that is pretty much unlike most of our neighbors and competitors, and a lot of people like it. So to me, the reason that the referendum is important is it's going to allow us to keep this brand, which is a successful brand. So jumping into the referendum, there are really going to be 3 questions on the ballot. Each one is separate and independent of one another. So all 3 questions could pass, or 2 could pass, or 1 could pass, or none could pass. They don't rely on one another. The first question is about technology. It will provide money, we call it a technology capital levy, that will keep us up to date with 21st century technology in the hands of our students and our teachers. We already have a technology levy. It's a 15-year levy that gives us money that we can strictly use only for technology. That 15-year levy is about to run out. It's going to run out in 1 more year. So it's time for us to renew that levy and to increase it slightly, because costs do go up. Our current levy is bringing in about $1.4 million a year. And if question 1 passes, that will go up to $1.7 million a year, and it will extend for 10 more years. So keeping up with technology is important. It's especially important in a district like ours that's old, because all of our buildings are quite old. And for us to keep up, for us to add speaker systems and projection screens and all the things that we have to do to help our students keep up with the times, it's slightly more expensive than it would be if you were in a newer building. So question 1 is technology. Question 2 is about bonds and building. And there are 2 parts to question 2. The first part is to build additions onto 3 of our elementary schools, Aquila, Peter Hobart, and Susan Lindgren. So if question 2 passes, all 3 of those schools will have 3 additional classrooms added on. Peter Hobart will also get a new cafeteria. The reason that's important is because our enrollment is actually rising slowly. Our brand is working. And we have more students that want to come here than we actually have seats. This year we turned away over 100 students who wanted to come to school in St. Louis Park because we literally didn't have space for them. So it'd be nice to add on a few more classrooms. Also, we're adding all-day kindergarten next year thanks to the legislature, and that's going to be a huge addition, but we need more space. And then also our current students are cramped. You know, we have classes that are meeting on stages and orchestras that are practicing in the hallway, and we really are very tight.
Can you explain a little bit about why the adding at several schools as opposed to reopening a closed school or building a completely new one?
Yes, that's a question I get asked a lot. We have a school, Cedar Manor, that we closed a few years ago. And many people ask, why don't you just reopen Cedar Manor? And there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is when you open a new school, you add a great deal of overhead costs before any student walks in the door. So if we reopen Cedar Manor, we'd have to hire a principal, add a secretary, a counselor, a social worker, a nurse, food service staff. We'd have to pay for buses to bring students there. It's between $500,000 and $750,000 a year, every single year, to operate a building. That's a lot of money. If we add on, using bond money, which you can't use for teachers anyway, 9 classrooms, pay for it one time, that will allow us to accomplish the same thing without adding the overhead cost. And in fact, if we can squeeze in a few more students than we have now, our money comes to us based on the number of students we have. We can actually increase our revenue. So it makes a lot more sense not to open Cedar Manor, but to build on to the schools that we currently have.
Excellent.
It's also easier for balancing students. So when students move to St. Louis Park, if we open Cedar Manor, it'd be a little tougher to move students there. This way, they know right where they're going to school already. They've grown accustomed to their school. We don't have to redraw boundaries. There's a lot of other reasons too, but it's a big financial reason.
Excellent.
So the second question has to do with those additions, plus general upkeep. We have older buildings that were built mostly in the 50s and 60s, and although they look nice, just like our homes at home, things break, and we are constantly working on replacing fans and replacing motors and boilers and carpet and paint and roofs, a never-ending list. And it's just like at home, if you don't keep up on those things, it comes back to haunt you. And so far, over the many years of these schools, the community has done their best to keep them up so that they last as long as possible, and we don't want to lose track of that. So question 2 is about the buildings. It's $15 million approximately, spread over 10 years.
Okay. And the final question?
The third question is the only question that would actually provide funding for hiring teachers and keeping programming. So question 1 was technology, question 2 was buildings, question 3 would allow us to stay competitive, keep our academic programs that are drawing students in, and keep our class sizes as good as they are today. The legislature made some changes last year, and those changes allowed us to go out and ask the community for a slight increase in local taxes that could go to this purpose, and we decided to go out and ask for it.
Terrific. So can you tell us a little bit about that tax impact to the average homeowner here in St. Louis Park?
Yes. The easiest way to explain it at this time is based on a $200,000 home. And for a $200,000 home, if all 3 of these questions passed, taxes would go up about $84 a year, $6.83 a month. So that's the tax impact if all 3 pass. Now remember I said it's possible that 2 could pass or 1 could pass, but if all 3 pass, it would be $84 a year. Now not connected to the referendum, it's important to note that our school board is refinancing some of our old debt. Some of our buildings are not yet paid for, and actually the repairs on the buildings are not yet paid for. So we are going to refinance some of our old debt. And when that happens, tax rates are going to go down about $15 a year for a $200,000 home in St. Louis Park. That will happen before the referendum.
Terrific. So you've done a great job explaining this, but I'm sure there are a lot more details. How can folks find out more about the referendum?
The best thing to do is go to the school website, www.slpschools.org, and you will find a link there that will give you all of this information in much more detail. Soon to be added is a tax calculator, so that folks will be able to put in the value of their home, and the taxes involved in this referendum will calculate to give them a personal view of how their taxes would be affected.
Well, it sounds very useful. Is there anything else you'd like to add today, Superintendent Metz?
Well, I just want to thank the community for all the support they've given the schools over the years. As I said earlier, 114 graduating classes here in St. Louis Park. It's pretty amazing. Long history, tremendous community support. And I have no doubt in my mind that the support from the community is why our schools are so good today. You know, you work for the city, I work for the school district. We know that we are intertwined, that the more successful the schools are, the better off the city will be. And the more successful the city is, the better off the schools will be. And we are trying to work hand in hand to make sure that St. Louis Park is one of the best places to live in Minnesota.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for joining us, and congratulations on your new appointment as superintendent. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you again soon.